So the link was supposed to be active from 4 p.m. onwards. We have started 5 minutes earlier. The participants will be joining till 4:15 p.m. We have a rule that after 4:15 p.m., no participant shall be allowed to join the session in the Google Meet format. And for the participants who will be watching this webinar rather, in the YouTube live format, they keep a track. Will start from 4:15 4:15, because these 15 minutes we have kept for the participant to enter into the Google Meet format. There's an important announcement for the Google Meet participants. You're requested to keep the microphone of your device muted during the webinar. We humbly request you to please do not unmute yourself or present your screen while the presentation is going on. So this is very important to carry forward the webinar. There's another announcement. There will be a feedback link provided in the chat box of Google Meet for the participants who are participating through Google Meet. And a comment box in the YouTube, there will be a feedback link for the participants. And you have to fill up the form so that we can provide you up with e-certificates. E-certificates will be mailed to you most probably within a week. So this is very important announcements that you should note down. We'll keep the window open till 4:15 p.m. This was the announcement we made earlier. So from 4 p.m. to 4:15 p.m., we will allow Google Meet participants to enter the meeting room. And the YouTube participants, please be patient. We'll start from 4:15 dot. That's the target. Already our speaker, Professor Vivekananda Mukherjee, have joined our meeting room. So we will wait till 4:15 for the participants to enter the meeting room. Uh, so we are seeing that many participants are joining in the Google Meet platform as well as uh, they are joining in the YouTube Live platform. There are two important announcements before we start with the webinar. The link was supposed to be active till 4:50 p.m. Participants will be allowed to join till 4:15 in the Google Meet platform. We have a rule that no participant shall be allowed to join the session after that. Google Meet platform. They can obviously join the YouTube Live platform. We have sent both the links for the Google Meet participants. And for the participants who are participating in this webinar through Google YouTube link, please be patient. Wait till 4:15. We'll start this webinar from 4:15. You are requested to keep the microphone of your device muted during the webinar. This is for the Google Meet participants. We'll humbly request to please do not unmute yourself or present your screen while the presentation is going on. And there is another announcement point that to need to be noted. There will be a feedback link provided in the chat box at the end of the webinar in the Google Meet platform. And link will be provided in the comment box of the YouTube live participants. You will have to fill up the forms so that we can provide you up with the e-certificates. Most probably within a week, we'll send them through your emails. So we'll wait till 4:15 for all the participants so in the Google Meet platform so that they can join. Nobody will be allowed to enter the Google Meet platform after 4:15 p.m. Obviously, they can join in the YouTube live platform, which will be open. So we'll wait till 4:15. I'll request one of our participants, Tridivesh Kundu, to please switch off your microphone. This is a request that I'm making. Again, you're requested to keep the microphone of your device muted during the webinar. Please also do not share your screen while the presentation is going on. There is another announcement. There will be a feedback link which will be provided in the chat box of Google Meet, comment box of YouTube participants, and you will have to fill up the form so that you can provide you up with the e-certificate later on most probably within a week. E-certificates will be sent through your email addresses. We have only a few minutes left, only 4 minutes left till all the participants join the Google Meet platform. Uh, After 4:15, no participant shall be allowed to join the Google Meet platform. Obviously, they can join through YouTube Live. Link has also been shared with them. The most important thing is that you have to keep your microphone for the Google Meet participant muted during the webinar. Please don't also present your screen while the presentation is going on. Another announcement, there will be a feedback link which will be provided in the chat box of Google Meet and comment box of YouTube participants. And you will have to fill up the form so that we can provide you up with the e-certificates later on, most probably within a week. So we have 3 minutes more left. In between, just a little point to note before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box in your Google Meet chat box, or for the YouTube participants in the YouTube comment box control panel. Bring them up in the question and answer session at the end of the presentation. So this is very important point before we get started. If you have any questions or queries, the resource person during the presentation, type them into the question box in your Google box or YouTube comment box control panel. Bring them up in the question and answer session at the end of the presentation. So we have just a minute left before we start on. You are again and again requested to keep your microphone of your device muted during the webinar. And please don't present your screen while the presentation is going on. There will be a feedback link provided in the chat box of Google Meet and comment box for YouTube participants. And you will have to fill up the form so that we can provide you up with the e-certificate. Certificates will be sent through email, most probably within a week. After microphone. So, hello. So, Professor Vivekananda Mukherjee, are you there?
Yes. Yes, I'm here.
Okay. So it's almost 4:15. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Tomognu Mondol, and I am Assistant Professor in the Department of Economics, Ramakrishna Mission Vidyamandir, Belur Math. On behalf of Ramakrishna Mission Vidyamandir, I express my sincere gratitude to you for having registered for the webinar organized by the Department of Economics. The topic of this webinar is extortion, competition among states and private investment in a federation, by Professor Vivekananda Mukherjee. Before we start on, We have an inaugural speech given by Principal Ramakrishna.
तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ A respectful namaskar, long good wishes and best of the prayer for all the participants, especially to Professor Vivekananda Mukherjee on behalf of Ramakrishna Mission Vidya Mandira and the Department of Economics. Let me extend my heartfelt gratitude to Professor Mukherjee for giving his kind constant addressing our webinars organized by the departments of history as well as Sanskrit. And right now, we're having two parallel sessions, so to say. One is being organized by the Department of Industrial Chemistry, and here again, we're having Department of Economics. Swami Vivekananda, the pathfinder, the visionary who dreamt of Ramakrishna Mission Vidya Mandira, he wanted to synthesize Eastern prudence along with the Western skill, science and technology. And that's what exactly is happening in Vidya Mandira, as we can see today. Actually, in course of a conversation, informal discussion with his beloved disciple Sharat Chandra Chakravarti, there at Belur Math, Swamiji pointed out that towards the southwestern corner of Belur Math would come up a big institution wherein the ancient Gurukula system would be nurtured and students would be trained in both Eastern and Western modes of education. So keeping the Pathfinder's vision in mind, in 1941, 4th July, exactly on the day of Mahasamadhi of Swamiji, Vidya Mandira came up, and as many as 78 years, 79 years have elapsed since the inception, and the institution has gone from strength to strength. It has grown up along multifarious directions. So, Department of Economics has also grown proportionately, as we can see today. And I'm really hopeful that today's enlightened discussion will help all the listeners, all our beloved students and members of the faculty in their pursuit of knowledge. And let me express once again my thanks and gratitude, Professor Vivekananda. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna.
Thank you, Maharaj, for your inaugural speech. I would like to introduce today's resource person, Professor Vivekananda Mukherjee. Vivekananda Mukherjee is the professor in the Department of Economics, Jadavpur University. He was the resource MA in economics from Jawaharlal Nehru University. BA in economics from Jadavpur University. The thesis ICSSR and FMSH Paris, postdoctoral fellowship awarded by INRA France Ormus Mundus Fellowship awarded by European Commission, Fellowship awarded by INRA France, Visiting Fellowship at Technical University of Freiburg, Germany, Visiting Fellowship at Monash University, Australia. He has many publications in journals, national and international, publications in edited volumes, books, projects to his name. Just a little point to note before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box in your Google Meet chat box or YouTube comment box or panel. I'll bring them up in the question and answer session at the end of the presentation. Now, without further delay, we will turn the time over to our resource person, our Professor Vivekananda Mukherjee.
Thank you, Tamogno, for this invitation and the introduction. So can you hear me clearly, and can you see the slide? Tamogno? Okay. So I hope you can see the slide. So, I mean, the Ramakrishna Mission Vidya Mandir, Belur Vidya Mandir is a leading institution of education in India, one of the leading colleges, and they are leading this discourse in economics. So it's always nice to come back to this institution for a talk. So let me start with this topic, okay, which is extortion, competition among states and private investment in a federation. Now, in this time of COVID, you know that Tamogno told me that there are many webinars on COVID, and we don't want to do anything, something which is related to COVID, because it's a much talked about topic. So we want to do a proper academic, the normal topic, okay, which is not COVID. But you can see that, so the topic I'm going to talk about, it's not a COVID topic, so to say, okay, but it has some relation, some kind of relation with the recent incidents related to COVID. For example, what has happened recently, that you know that China, there is an allegation that US made an allegation that the China has spread the virus, and they in fact want the companies to leave China. Okay, and so then the other countries like India, Vietnam, and others, okay, so they are in fact trying to attract these firms who are leaving China. So there are competition among countries, okay, to attract private investment, private investors, okay, who are leaving, who are willing to leave China, okay, to accommodate in their own economy. So there is a competition among countries in this example, but what I'm going to talk about is not competition among countries, it will be competition among states, and we will be talking about the competition among states in a federation like India. Federation means a country, okay, where you have many state governments, okay, and a central government like India, okay, and we'll be talking about the Indian states, and they are competing for private investment, okay, to locate in their own region, in their own state. And we are familiar with this type of competition. Remember that we lost a car factory, okay, to Gujarat in 10 years back, okay, and that led to a change in power in West Bengal, and you know that we had a government, left government for 35 years. Ruling the state, okay, so there was a change, and you know that many things happened after that and during that time. So what I'm going to talk about is related to that, okay. So there are different governments, they're trying to attract private investment in their own region, in their own state, okay, by giving some incentives, okay, to the private investment. That's the way they are competing with each other. Now, and extortion is, and of course, the focus of this topic is how extortion is going to affect this competition and the flow of private investment to the states. So extortion we are going to talk about is something, okay, which is again is very talked about topic in West Bengal in recent times. So essentially what I'm talking about is syndicate kind of thing, okay, syndicate cut money kind of thing. So suppose you are going to do something, okay, and you have legitimate recipients of some of the services of the government. Okay, but you have to pay money to get that service. So if this happens, so for no fault of yours, okay, you are paying money to some people, okay, to get the service. So if this happens, so then we call this situation a situation of extortion. So for private investment, what the extortion situation is simply, I mean, when the investor comes to build a factory, okay, in the state, so then some people, a mafia or syndicate or whatever you call, I mean, so these people, so they will come to you and tell you that if you don't pay money, okay, so then you cannot build the factory. Yeah, you cannot get the water license, okay, if you don't pay to the government official, okay, or the local political leaders. Okay, so if this happens, okay, so then we are talking about a situation of extortion. So the motivation for this talk, okay, or for this research was essentially to see how much important the phenomenon of extortion, okay, in attracting private investment in a state, or in other words, because of these extortion incidents, okay, how much private investment a state can lose. Okay, so that's the topic we are going to talk about, and so this is the motivation. You can see that what has happened in India. So there was a change in 1991. So before that, or even after that, okay, so you know that the central government used to play a very important role, okay, in allocation, in location of the private investors in different states, okay, or in location of investment, industrial investment in different states. They used to control it, and you know that West Bengal government, you can remember that at that time, the previous slave government, okay, used to talk about, I mean, so they are discriminated against, okay, by the central government. So that's why the private investment don't come to the investors, they don't come to West Bengal. Okay, so there is a discrimination against the slave government in the state. So the central government used to play a major role, okay, in this investment decision, both the public sector and private sector investment decision in the state. But afterwards, what has happened, you know that the central government has much less role to play in this. Okay, so now what happens, the state, they in fact try to attract this private investment, okay, in the states, right? And every year, you know that you have big this investment summit, okay, which is organized by each of the state governments, okay, where the industrialists are in fact invited, okay, and so then they are requested to make investment in the state. Okay, so that's the situation. So what I'm talking about, that when we are out of this command and control system, so then we have more competition among the states, okay, to attract the private investment. Or in other words, the decision to locate in a particular state is left mostly to the private investor themselves. Okay, the central government does not have much role to play in it. Now, left to itself, okay, so if you leave the investment, the location decision, okay, to the firms, so then in economics, there is a theory. Okay, so that talks about which are the determinants of this location choice, right? And if you look at this location theory, okay, so then some of the important factors which should matter, okay, in the location decision. So of course, the location decision is the profit maximizing decision of the firm. The first one is the transport cost of input and output are minimized. Okay, so it matters where you are selling the commodity, okay, and from where you are getting the inputs, okay, and the transport cost matters. For example, that so suppose you are selling a commodity, okay, which is for which the inputs are for example, if you want to sell 1 kilogram of a commodity in a market, okay, if you know that the inputs, okay, which are required to produce this commodity, okay, is of less weight, okay, so easier to carry, okay, from from their source, okay, and so then of course your location choice would be more towards the city, okay, or where your market is. Okay, for example, we are talking about say the bottling of selling of the Coca-Cola bottles. Okay, so of course you will expect the Coca-Cola bottling firm, okay, to be located near the city, okay, because the output carrying cost is higher than the input carrying cost, okay. And similarly, if you want to open a steel factory, okay, you will be located more near to the source of the input, okay, so that means iron ore, okay. So probably because it's easier to carry the steel products, okay, so it's less costly to carry the steel products, okay, to the market, okay, so than to move the iron ore, okay, near the city, okay, to a factory which is located near the city, okay. So these are the considerations which actually play a role, okay, in the location decision. Now, the second point is advantage of economies of scale in production is taken care of. Okay, so if there is economies of scale in production process, okay, so then if you produce a lot, of high amount, okay, in a particular location, so then your cost of production falls. Okay, so that is the minimum of economies of scale. Higher is the scale of production in the plant, okay, average cost falls. Okay, so therefore, whether you will you'll break up your entire output in number of plants, or you'll produce the entire amount, okay, in a single plant, okay, so that is taking care of this existence of economies of scale. Now, the third thing, okay, which is important, is the forces of pecuniary and non-pecuniary agglomeration. So what do I mean by pecuniary and non-pecuniary agglomerations? These are essentially externalities, okay. So if it happens that if you locate near another plant, okay, producing similar commodities, so if that reduces your production cost, okay, so then we say that there is a pecuniary externality, okay. And similarly, if two plants or two factories are located near to each other, okay, and for that, that so there is a technological spillover, okay, or exchange of ideas among the employees. For that, the cost of production falls, okay, so then there is a non-pecuniary agglomeration. So there is an externality which is not flowing through the market, so it's a direct impact, okay. So if that happens, okay, so then we say that there is a non-pecuniary agglomeration, okay, so force of agglomeration that is working, okay, so that is again, influences a firm's decision to locate in a particular place, okay. For example, the IT industry, the natural destination of a IT firm, okay, would be Bangalore, okay, because many IT firms are located over there, okay, rather than to locate in a place like Kolkata, okay, so where you have the density of IT firms is much less, okay. So why? Because that if many IT firms are there, so then that the employees, okay, who are looking for job, okay, so they know that the IT jobs are there in Bangalore, so they will go over there, okay, and it's easier to hire hire an expert, okay, in the IT firm in Bangalore rather than in Kolkata, okay. So it much less cost for the firm, okay. So these kind of things, okay, so that becomes important in the location choice. Now, a state, a government, okay, in a federation may influence location choice of a firm by choice of cost reducing policies. Okay, so they can influence this cost benefit calculation, which is done by the firm. And there are two main instruments through which this can happen. One is tax incentives given to the firm, okay, and the second is a firm or industry specific investment, okay, which is given. Now, if we give tax incentives, okay, so if the government gives tax incentives, okay, so then what happens, that it is a kind of public good, okay, so every firm operating in the state, okay, so they will get this incentive. So the cost of the government would be higher, okay, because they have to give the incentive to everyone, okay, operating. But of course, the objective of the firm is to attract a particular firm, okay, or particular industry, okay, in its own jurisdiction, okay. So therefore, probably it's less costly, okay, for the government to give firm or industry specific investment, okay. So you build you give land to the firm, okay, at a very low price to the firm at a very low price, okay. You build the infrastructure, okay, which is necessary for building this factory, okay, in a particular place, okay. You build highway, okay, you give water connection, okay, and all these things, okay, and these are done by spending public money, okay. So this is called a farm or industry specific investment, okay. So think about, the things which was happening in Shingur. So there was an allegation that the government was giving this land, okay, at a very low price, okay, to the Tata Nano factory, right? and it was, allegation was that it was not transparent and all these things. Okay, and of course it was providing a whole lot of infrastructural benefit to Tatas and all these things, and there was a political issue around that. But this kind of thing I found afterwards that it is very regular in economies like US, okay, where, you know, I mean, the states, they compete with each other to attract investment, okay, in their own jurisdiction, okay. And I mean, the entire thing is very transparent, okay. Everyone knows that how much money the government spends, what is the nature of contract, okay, for doing this, and so on. So this is standard. I mean, it doesn't happen in European Union, okay, because you know that they think that the competition between the states can be detrimental, okay. So some countries in the world, so they ban this kind of competition among the states, okay. But this is very much open in a country like US, okay. So it happens very much over there, okay, and in India also. Okay? We know that this happens among the states. Now, how corruption affects this process? Now, if you talk about corruption, okay, so then corruption can be of two different types, okay. One is collusion, the other is extortion. The extortion I have already talked about, okay, in my introduction, okay. So so someone, okay, who doesn't done anything wrong, okay, but still has to pay money. The firm, okay, which has come for building the factory, okay, so it has to pay money at every step, okay, for no fault of the firm itself, okay. So if this happens, so then is extortion. So this is, if extortion is there, it increases cost of the project, okay. So if extortion is there, you'll expect private investment to fall, okay. So if the private investor knows that I have to pay additional amount, okay, so it would increase cost, okay. So less amount of flow, okay, is expected to come in the state. On the other hand, if collusion is there, the collusion actually reduces cost, okay. So what is collusion? So some kind of violation of law is involved in collusion, okay. So the firm actually paying to the government official or some people, okay, such that some laws, okay, which are binding, okay, so I mean, to bypass the law, okay. So they are trying to bypass this law, okay, by payment of money. So, and why they are doing this? Because it increases their profit, okay, compared to an honest equilibrium, okay. So it's a Pareto improving side contract, okay. So the firm benefits out of it, okay, through violation of law, okay. And the way they get benefited through reduction of cost, okay. So for example, if I can skirt the environmental law, okay, so then of course my cost of production falls, okay, because I don't have to build the plant, okay, which will remove pollution, okay. Now, but I have paid to the government official. The government official actually does not look at this particular issue, so therefore the firm does not pay anything and does not build a plant and so on, okay. So it goes on, so it increases the profit of the firm. If this happens, so then the collusion actually is preferred by the firms, okay, who are investing, because you know that it reduces cost, okay, and in competitive world, cost reduction is very, very important, okay. So you'll expect private investment to go up. So how the state government or a firm would react to the situation of extortion, okay. Now here we are not going to talk about collusion in this paper. Okay, so we'll be specific about extortion, because you know that there are papers which look at the effect of collusion of corruption, not collusion. Okay, so of corruption on private investment. Okay, and the results are mixed. Okay, so some of the papers would show that the effect is positive. Some of the papers would show that the effect is negative. Okay, now why this happens? Okay, so because you know that, as I have said, that the collusion, there can be two different types of corruption. So there can be collusion and extortion, and collusion and extortion, these two effects, they move in opposite direction. Okay, so therefore, if you look at the effect of corruption on private investment, you are expected to have mixed kind of things. So if collusion, you know, dominates extortion, so then you will say that the corruption increases private investment. Okay, so otherwise, if extortion dominates collusion, you will say that you will see that the private investment is going down, and sometimes you will see that the effect is insignificant because of these two opposing effects. Okay, so you have a whole lot of results like this. Okay, empirical literature. Okay, so I'm not going into this, okay, because you know that in India nowadays we have data on extortion. Okay, so we can separate out the effect of extortion, okay, in Indian case. Okay, so I'll talk about that. Okay, so so what the government can do, okay, in the situation of extortion. So if you think government, and of course the farm would also react to the situation of extortion. Now first look at the government. So what the government would do, you know that the government, the fast-paced policy of the government, okay, will be stopping the extortion. Okay, so that's the best thing what the government can do. But the second best policy, okay, would be, and of course, stopping extortion, theoretically the government can do, but most of the governments, they don't do it, okay, because, you know, of different types of political compulsions and all these things, okay, and so in developing countries, the governments are weak, okay, so they cannot control corruption. Okay, so stopping extortion, we would not consider, okay, so since we are talking about developing countries, and the second best policy, okay, which they can follow, okay, is giving farm or industry specific incentives, okay, to the private firms, okay, which would compensate for the loss from extortion. Okay, so there is a loss from extortion, so that we know, okay, but we give some farm or industry specific investment, okay, to compensate for this loss, okay, such that the private investment actually flows in, okay, the state. Now, what the farms could do? Now, farms could have three different types of reactions to this situation. Okay, the first is changing the nature of investment at the state. Okay, you know that the investments, okay, which involve lot of sunk cost, okay, sunk investment, okay, which cannot be easily removed. Okay, or you cannot, you know that if the nature of the sunk investment, that you cannot get back your the money which you have spent, okay, in this investment, okay, and so that means you don't build a big factory, okay, or you don't invest in a machine, okay, which cannot be removed easily, okay, so the nature of investment is going to change, okay, so so that's one reaction. The second reaction can be that the farm can fight extortion, okay, so it can and in a legal, and this is not legal, okay, so what the farm can do, the farm can also go to the mafia leaders, okay, to fight the extortionist, okay, so that's entirely possible, okay, but of course this is not a legal process. Now the third reaction, okay, so that could be that investing in another state, okay, with higher profit opportunity, okay, so another state is there which has, you know, it may be that it has less incidence of extortion, okay, or it is giving higher incentives, okay, so then why don't you remove your investment, okay, from one state to another state, okay, to get this profit opportunity, okay. So in our case, in our paper, we look at this, okay, so the third one, the investing in another state, okay, with higher profit opportunity, okay, so because I think that is the least cost option, okay, for the firm, okay, rather than, you know, that changing the nature of investment and fighting extortion. The anticipated behavior, and the government knows that the farm is going to react in this way, okay, so therefore the anticipated behavior of the farm induces the state governments in a federation to compete in terms of their farm or industry specific investment. Now this paper has two parts, okay, one is empirical part. Now the empirical part uses data from Indian states, okay, to check whether the extortion negatively affects private investment, okay, and so we have basically three questions: whether the private investment in similar industry specific investment states are correlated with each other, okay, so whether extortion has negative impact on private investment at similar industry specific investment states, okay, and third, whether the extortion in one state affects the flow of private investment in another similar industry specific investment state. Okay, so these are the three questions we look at, okay, with Indian data. And before that, we'll have a small theoretical section. So the theoretical part actually clarifies the relation between extortion and both the private and public investment in states of a federation. Now, first, let's go to the theory. The theory, so suppose consider a federation which has two regions, 1 and 2, okay? And a firm owned by outsiders, okay, may invest 1 unit of capital, okay, in the 2 regions, right? Xi is the amount of capital invested in region I. Okay, so X1, if there are 2 regions, X1 is the amount of capital invested in region 1 and X2 is the amount of capital invested in region 2. The production function in region 2 takes this form. Okay, so this is Fi equal to Gi Xi into delta Xi squared. So this specific form we have taken, so because you know that this is convenient. Okay, so Gi is actually the public investment, the firm or industry specific investment that we have talked about. Okay, so Xi is the private investment, okay, in the state. So the marginal product, okay, with respect to investment of capital, okay, is this derivative curl Fi by curl Xi. Okay, so clearly from this function, so this will look like this. So delta is the rate of decline of marginal productivity of capital. Okay, so if Gi is greater than, okay, so I think this is not that relevant, Gi greater than delta. So actually what is, so if entire investment of capital, okay, is done in state I, okay, so then Xi will be equal to 1. Okay, so then you know that Gi has to be greater than delta, okay, to make this marginal product positive. Okay, so that is the meaning of Gi greater than delta. Okay, so delta is the rate of decline of marginal productivity of capital. Now you can see that the marginal productivity of capital will increase, okay, with the increase in the public investment, the industry specific investment. Okay, so this cross derivative is positive. So what is this cross derivative? Delta of delta Gi of delta Fi by delta Xi. Okay, so you know that this is positive. So that means you know that the public investment affects the productivity of private capital positively. So extortion is modeled in the following way. So extortion increases the cost of investing in the state. So we have imagined that the extortion acts as a tax, okay, on the investment of capital in the state. Okay, so TI is a tax rate, okay, the extortion rate. Okay, so it lies between 0 and 1. Okay, so the firm's profit is this. Okay, so we have here normalized the price of the commodity to 1. Okay, so if the firm invests X1 in state 1, okay, so then F1 X1 is the output. Okay, so if it invests X2 in state 2, so then F2 X2 is the output. So remember that the total amount of capital which is being invested in the states is X1 plus X2, okay, but that is equal to 1. Okay, and R is the rate of interest which is prevailing in the market. Okay, so R has to be paid, okay, to the owners of capital. Okay, and T1 X1 and T2 X2, so these are the loss due to extortion. So this is maximized, this profit is maximized by choice of X1 and X2 subject to X1 plus X2 equal to 1, okay, which is a constant. Now, the equilibrium decision, okay, so the amount of X1 and X2, okay, so that is decided by this condition, okay, which is essentially the marginal profit, okay, from investing in the 2 regions. Okay, so left hand side of this equation, so this is called arbitrage condition. Okay, so what arbitrage condition does, okay, so it equates the marginal profit to be obtained from region 1, okay, to the marginal profit to be obtained from region 2. Okay, so this is the marginal profit, the net marginal profit to be obtained from the left hand side of this equation, the net marginal profit to be obtained from region 1. Okay, and the right hand side is the net marginal profit to be obtained from region 2. Okay, now what I have done in this diagram, okay, so in this graph, okay, the red line, okay, is the net marginal product curve for region 1, okay, and the blue curve is the net marginal product curve for region 2. Okay, and where they intersect, okay, so there in fact you know that you get the equilibrium allocation of investment between the region. Okay, so this horizontal axis is of length 1, so this is the total amount of capital to be invested. So X1 star is invested in region 1, okay, and 1 minus X1 star, that is equal to X2 star, okay, is invested in region 2, right? So this is the role of the arbitrage condition to determine X1 star and X2 star. So if you solve for X1 star and X2 star, okay, so it will look like this. Okay, so this is the optimum allocation of private investment. Now here what is important to notice that it depends both on G1 and G2. okay, the public investments in the two regions, okay, and T1 and T2, okay, which are the extortion rates in the two regions, okay. Now suppose that both the regions, they invest similar amount, okay, on industry, okay, so G1 and G2, so that is equal to 0, okay. So if that is the case, okay, so then if region 1 has higher extortion rate, okay, T1 is greater than T2, okay, so then of course X1 star will be less than half, okay, and X2 star will be greater than half, okay. So more investment will go to the less extortion state, okay. Now, so and opposite, if you know that T2 is greater than T1, okay, so then the opposite thing will happen, okay, so X1 star will be greater than half, X2 star will be less than half. Now this entire, and this is very simple, very intuitive, okay, but this entire calculation, okay, will get a twist, okay, so if the choice of G1 and G2, okay, come into place, okay. So I have assumed that G1 and G2, they are roughly equal, so that is equal to 0, okay. But suppose you know that the higher extortion state, okay, so that also invest higher amount, okay, in industry specific investment, okay, compared to region 2, so then G1 will be greater than G2, okay, and depending on so G1 minus G2 is now positive, okay, T1 minus T2 is also positive. So if this first term dominates the second term, X1 star can be greater than half. Okay, so in that case, you know that more amount of private investment will go to the higher extortion state. Okay, we cannot rule out that possibility. Okay, so in the empirical part, you know that these equations will be important. Okay, so in fact, we'll be looking at states, okay, which will have similar amount of industry-specific investment. So G1 is roughly equal to G2, and there we'll see that whether higher T1. Okay, so that in fact leads to lower flow of private investment in the states. Now, to complete this theoretical model, okay, we bring in the choice of G1 and G2. Okay, and and in fact, you see that the choice of G1 and G2 would be strategic. Okay, so we have to talk about a public investment game, okay, between the regions. So where there are two regions, region 1 chooses G1 and region 2 chooses G2 simultaneously, okay, anticipating consequences of their choice on the flow of private investment to their region. So region 1 does not have any control over G2, region 2 does not have any control over G1, okay. They have to anticipate what the other player is doing. So this is a simultaneous move game. Okay, and the equilibrium choice of public investment G1 star, G2 star, okay, in the regions is decided at the Nash equilibrium of the public investment game between the regions. Okay, now if we want to talk about the choice of G1 and G2, we have to specify the welfare function of the regional governments. Okay, and if you look at the welfare function of the regional government, okay, it will take the following form. Okay, so remember that so this choice of Xi, okay, in the region comes from this this arbitrage equation. So what is happening over here, the state 1, say suppose X1 star is invested in state 1. Okay, so this is the marginal product curve, okay, for this production function. So the total amount of output that will be produced, okay, is given by this area of this trapezium. Okay, so out of that, you know that this has to be paid to the capital. Okay, so this is taken away from there. Okay, the firm also pays the extortion cost, okay, but that you know that goes into some people in the state. Okay, so that's why you know that does not appear over here. Okay, right. And GI star by 2, okay, is actually the investment cost of GI. So if the state decides to spend more, okay, as industry specific investment, okay, it has to take away, it has to, you know, draw money from the other areas of budget allocation. Okay, so probably it has to withdraw money from poverty alleviation program or other things. Okay, so that has a cost. Okay, and that cost is captured by GI square by 2. Okay, so this is a convex cost. Okay, so more is the GI, okay, higher is the cost. So we have reaction functions, simultaneous move game, okay, and these are the reaction functions, okay, and when these reaction functions are solved, okay, so then we get the Nash equilibrium. So G1 star and G2 star, so these are the Nash equilibrium values, okay, so you can see that if T1 is greater than T2, Okay, so the higher extortion state, okay, will invest higher amount of money, okay, in the infrastructure investment, okay, for the industry or industry specific investment, okay, and if and the other state, okay, will spend less. Okay, so as a result of that, you know that when we put back this value of G1 star and G2 star, okay, in this expression for x1 star and x2 star, okay, we get the final value of x1 star and x2 star. Okay, and you can see that these are the final values of x1 star and x2 star. Okay, so and surprisingly, I mean, what is happening in this example is that if T1 is greater than T2, okay, so then higher private investment will flow to the higher extortion state. Okay, and why this is happening? Okay, because you know that higher amount of money is spent by the higher extortion state, okay, in the industry specific investment. Okay, so that is able to outweigh the negative effect of extortion, okay, and attracting higher amount of private investment in the state. Okay, so this is entirely possible. But as I told you that we are not going to talk about the choice of G1 and G2. Okay, so so G1 and G2 is going to be a given data for us. Okay, and we, for empirical part, will focus on these equations, okay, of determination of private investment. Okay, so in fact, what we'll see that how this infrastructural investment, okay, and specifically similarity of infrastructure. I mean, we'll use a method, okay, to look at similar industry specific investment states. Okay, and there we'll see that whether the higher extortion rate, okay, actually reduces private investment in the state. Okay, so any question up to this point? Hello.
I guess we'll take the questions after you complete the entire session.
Okay, okay. How many minutes I have?
You can take your own time.
Okay. Okay, so let's look at the empirical part. Okay, so we are talking about Indian states. Okay, and we have data from 2006 to 2011. Okay, we have taken the data for the states, most of the states in India, and remember that between 2006 and 2007, there is a mismatch between these years that we have taken, and this map I'm showing to you. So because you can see that Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, so at that time, so before 2011, so these two states were not separated. Okay, so we had a single state of Andhra Pradesh. Okay, so we have data of Andhra Pradesh, not Telangana and Andhra Pradesh separately, and we don't have the data, the kind of data we are using, okay, for Arunachal Pradesh and Mizoram. Okay, so these two states are left out, and we don't have data for union territories like, say, Pondicherry, Daman, Diu, Dadra, Nagar Haveli, and Andaman Nicobar. But you know that these are small exclusions. Okay, so in terms of the total area of the country and the amount of population, okay, so living in these states, and of course the amount of private investment, okay, so these regions attract. Okay, so so that's the point. And what we do is the following. So we do a cross-section regression to test whether extortion has any effect on the private investment. Now, in what sense this is cross-section? So because what we have done, so we have taken data of these 5 years, 2006 to 2011, okay, and then we have taken average of the values, okay, of private investment and infrastructure investment and other things, okay, for these 5 years. Okay, now and why we do this? Okay, because you know that extortion data, so there is a problem with the extortion data, so we don't have extortion data for all these years. Okay, so in fact we have only one extortion data point. Okay, and we want to capture the effect of extortion. So extortion does not have a time variation, so that's why we cannot use the panel data over here. Okay, so what we have done, we have settled for extortion, I mean this cross section, okay, which is created of these 5 years. Okay, and why these 5 years are taken? So because you know that this was a growth period, okay, of Indian economy. So a lot of FDI and private investment actually came in, okay, in the states, okay, during this time period. Okay, and the other thing why we have taken this cross section, because we are going to apply a technique of econometrics, okay, which is known as spatial econometrics, okay, over here. And spatial econometrics, you know, though it has a panel spatial econometrics kind of thing, okay, which has come up, okay, has developed recently, okay, but you know that we have not applied that technique over here, okay, so we stick to the conventional spatial econometric technique. Now, the private investment at the states is calculated from the gross capital formation data. So in India, we don't have the private investment data, okay, for the states separately. Okay, so what we have is a gross capital formation data, okay, so which is available at the RBI Indian economy, the statistics on Indian economy and handbook of statistics. But what we have the gross capital formation of each of the states, right? And then we have so they have a data, okay, which says that what is the proportion of public investment and private investment, okay, at the all India level. Okay, so there is a data on this ratio, okay, between these two types of investment. So we apply this ratio, okay, for each of the states to calculate the amount of private investment, okay, in each of the states. Okay, so gross capital formation data at each of the states on which we apply this ratio, okay, to determine the private investment at each of the states. Okay, so that's the way the private investment data has been collected. Okay, and we also this L, PVT, INV, so L stands for log. So when we run the regression, actually we take log value of this private investment. Now for expenditure and industry, okay, we take the data in one period lag, okay, so because you know that it is a kind of predetermined variable. So what we are looking at, remember that equation, okay, so given the amount of infrastructural investment, okay, we want to see how the extortion affect the flow of private investment. So to bring in this, the sense of predeterminedness in this variable, okay, so we have take this data in 1 year lag, okay, so there that means that for 2006 and 11, so we have taken this expenditure on industry data, okay, for 2005 to 10, okay, and this data has been collected from state finances, a study of budgets, again an RBI publication, okay, so anyone can get this data, okay, so again we have take the log values of this data. Now for the extortion, we have this data available in the National Crime Record Bureau data, okay, which is published by Government of India, okay, and we get this data for only for the year 2015. So they have started giving this data from 2015. So I think we have some more data points for recent years, okay, but you know that since our investment data is from 2006 to 11, so we have applied this data, and since you know that the extortion, corruption, so these are the institutional features, and institutional features take long time to change, okay, so therefore we can imagine that even in 2006 and 11, okay, you know, so in our period of study the rate of extortion was similar, okay. So now how do we take the extortion data? So we take the number of reported cases of extortion per 1 lakh population of the state. Okay, I'll show you the data afterwards, okay? And we also take some independent variables which can affect the flow of investment. The first one is the market size data. So you know that the private investment can be attracted by the size of the market in a state, okay? So therefore, we take the market size data, okay? And this is proxied by GSDP share, okay? So GSDP share of a particular state in the total gross domestic product of the country, okay? So that's the way the market size is calculated. Whether same political party government ruled in the state and the center, okay, so if there is an advantage, okay, being in alliance with the center, the government at the center, okay, to see that we have used the alliance index. Now what happens in the how the alliance index is calculated, you know that so for these 5 years a party, what we do, so if there is center and in a particular year there is the same party or there is a coalition, I mean a party which is in a coalition, okay, in both center and state, okay, so then they get a value of 1, okay, so if they are in the opposite camp, so then it gets a value of 0. Okay, so and we do it for all the 5 years. Okay, from the election commission website. Okay, we get the data. Okay, and then we calculate the average number. Okay, so if there is a party, okay, which is in the state and the power for all these 5 years, okay, so in the index they will get the value of 1. Okay, and if they are always in opposition, okay, so then it will get the value of 0. Okay, and some years in this, you have alliance with the center party at the center and not in some of the years. Okay, so then it will be in between. Now, an index of infrastructure, which is called infra, okay, so that we have constructed. So it constitutes the data on roads, railways, enrollment ratio in education, because you know that whether the labor force is educated or not, that matters. Okay, so we take care of that, okay, by including the enrollment ratio and so on. Okay, so that's the way the infrastructural index, okay, is calculated. Now, this is the all India data. So this is the descriptive statistics. Okay, you can see that, I mean, so the first column is a private investment in INR 10 millions. Okay, so that means crores. Okay, so this is the mean value of investment in all the states. Okay, in this period. Okay, so similarly, extortion per 1 lakh population was, 128.2 number of cases. Okay, so that's the mean value. Okay, and similarly the other numbers. Okay, and right, and we keep the median, SD, and all these things. Now, this is interesting. So this is in fact state-wise breakup of private investment. Okay, and you can, so these numbers are given in billion. Okay, you can see that within this 5-year period, 2006 to 11, okay, the highest investment flow of private investment went to Gujarat. Okay, so 350 billion Indian rupees. Okay, so Maharashtra that got slightly less than that. Okay, and you can see West Bengal's position. Okay, so this is, I mean, so one of, I mean, so this is slightly below, I think 100 billion. Okay, right. So yeah, so it's slightly below 100 billion. Okay, so Tamil Nadu is the other state, Andhra Pradesh. Okay, so they were getting, and the northeastern states, okay, so they were getting, I mean, almost zero. Okay, private investment flow. Okay, so except Assam has something. Okay, and Bihar and these things are low. Okay, the average market size and corruption index. Okay, now in this diagram, the GSDP share, as I have mentioned, so that is used as the value of market size. Okay, and so you can see that, so this is in the right axis. Okay, so GSDP share is in the right axis. Okay, and these bars, they are representing the market share of these states, market size of the states. So again, Maharashtra offers the largest market in India. Okay, and West Bengal is also a big market. Okay, so right, so and you know that Gujarat is better than us. Okay, Uttar Pradesh is better than us. Tamil Nadu is better than us. Okay, and again the northeastern states, they have low market size. Okay. So and the line over here, okay, the blue line, so that represents the extortion per 10 lakhs. Sorry, the extortion per 1 lakh population. Okay, and you can see that extortion rate is highest in the northeastern states, Manipur, Meghalaya, and Nagaland. Okay, and also in Assam. Okay, but extortion is, I mean, above the average in Delhi. Okay, Haryana. Okay, Jharkhand, okay, Tamil Nadu. Okay, so these are also the states, okay, which above the average rate of extortion, okay, in India. Now, the public expenditure on industry and infrastructure in Indian states. So we look at the expenditure, industry-specific expenditure within, so in 1 year lag. Okay, and the bars, the blue bars, okay, so they are the level of expenditure industry, expenditure in industry. Okay, and you can see that again, Maharashtra is the highest spending state. Okay, on expenditure, industry specific expenditure. Okay, so Gujarat is something. West Bengal in this period 2006 and 11. Okay, so West Bengal also spent a lot. Okay, so in fact West Bengal came just after the Maharashtra. Okay, and more than Gujarat. Okay, right, and higher than Uttar Pradesh. In fact, in a time of Shingur factory, so that falls within this period, 2006 and 11. In fact, you know that we are competing with Uttar Pradesh, a location in Uttar Pradesh and a location in Gujarat, okay, for location of the plant, right? So, and we have this infrastructural index value, okay, and you can see that, so these are, and the best infrastructure is in Delhi, right? And West Bengal is not so good in terms of infrastructure. Okay, so Uttarakhand is much better than us. Okay, Sikkim is much better, and so on. Okay, so Maharashtra is of course good. Okay, so Himachal Pradesh is also good, and so on. Karnataka, Kerala, so they are also very good in infrastructure. Now, this is the alliance index. Okay, so I have already explained how the alliance index was formed. So you can see that Gujarat is a state. Okay, so that has a value of 0. So Gujarat, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Nagaland. So in all these 5 years, okay, so they were not in coalition with the party, okay, which was at the center. Okay, right? And so these states, Andhra Pradesh, Assam and Haryana, Maharashtra, so they were always in alliance with the party at the center. Okay, West Bengal was in the middle. So because you know that the left front government actually, the left parties, they left the central government in between 2006 and 11. Okay, right? So that's why it is in the middle. Okay, at 0.4, right, and so on. So that's the way this alliance index works. Now here we have a scattered plot, okay, between extortion and private investment, okay, and you can see that so there is a negative trend, okay, and this is guided by these northeastern states, okay. So these are so they are, I mean, if you suppose you eliminate these northeastern states, okay, the Mizoram, I think this is MN is what MN I don't know. I'm not sure about MN. Okay, but Assam, Meghalaya, Nagaland, I think Manipur. Okay, so if you eliminate these states as outlier, even then I think it will be negatively sloped. Okay, but since we are doing special econometrics, one of the restrictions of doing special econometrics, you have to take all the states, okay, which are available. Okay, so in a particular space. Okay, so that's the requirement. So that's why you have to include all these states. Okay, and you can see that higher extortion states have lower private investment. Now here we have expenditure, the plot of expenditure industry, private investment against expenditure industry in T-1. Okay, so here, I mean, it is guided by Maharashtra, UP and West Bengal. So you have an upward rising trend. Okay, and there is clearly, I mean, Maharashtra is way above, okay, in expenditure in industry. Okay, but Gujarat, UP, West Bengal, so they will form a cluster. Okay, so another cluster is over here between 1 and 2. Okay, and another cluster is there, okay, between 0 and 1. Okay, so some states that actually have higher industry specific investment. Okay, and so they are clustered at the, I mean, lower industry specific investment. So there is a cluster like that, okay, at the bottom. So then there is another cluster with industry specific investment more than that. Okay, so then you have Gujarat, UP and West Bengal, and then Maharashtra is clearly an outlier. Okay, now some of these variables, okay, so they are correlated with each other, okay, at significant level. Okay, for example, GSDP share and expenditure in industries, so they have high correlation coefficient between them, 0.89. So this is pairwise correlation between these variables. Okay, and also alliance index and GSDP share, so that has a correlation coefficient of 0.85. So when we run the Wallace regression to start with, okay, we cannot take all these variables at the same time. So the table actually shows that. Okay, so so the first regression, we take only the extortion per 1 lakh population as the explanatory variable. Okay, so no other variable is included. Okay, and you can see that the coefficient is negative and significant at 1% level. Okay, so then in regression 2 and 3, we include the other explanatory variables, but still, so when we include the other explanatory variables, the coefficient value falls a little bit. So this is 0.004. Okay, but it remains significant at the 5% level. The level of significance falls. Okay, but it remains significant at the 5% level. Okay, and you can see that GSTP share is also has a very significant value. Okay, so it affects the flow of private investment significantly at the 1% level. Okay, and this industry expenditure, okay, so that is also significant at the 1% level. Okay, but infra and alliance index, okay, so these are not significant factor, okay, to influence the flow of private investment in Indian states. Now, as we run the special regressions afterwards, okay, so because of this thing, okay, since we know that alliance index and infra, so these are not important factors, okay, we don't include them, okay, in our special regression. Okay. Now, in special regression, okay, normally what happens, okay, so these are the questions. We try to find out whether the states which are similar in terms of their public expenditure to industry and market size we don't do, okay, so so we look at only the public expenditure to industry, okay, whether these states receive similar public investment. Okay, now why we're doing special regression? Because I mean here special regression actually gives you a way, okay, to concentrate your attention, okay, on the similar public. It takes into account similarity of infrastructural investment in the states. Okay, so so remember in the equation, so we have G1 minus G2. Okay, so how close G1 minus G2 is? Okay, so that can be built in the regression. Okay, so through spatial regression technique. So that's why you are using spatial regression, and we have seen in this diagram earlier that you have some clustering of infrastructural investment, okay, within the state. Okay, so the spatial regression can capture this concentration of the clustering of the public expenditure on industry in a better way. Okay, so that's why you are doing it. So so we control for that, okay, in the spatial regression technique, right? Now look at this regression equation. So so we want to explain the variation in the private investment, okay, the log value of that. Okay, so how does it depend on the average? So this W into L PVT in is nothing but, you know, that the average private investment, okay, in the state, in the other states, okay, in the country, okay, and this W matrix is actually is called the weight matrix, okay, in the spatial regression. Now, normally when we spatial regression is done, okay, so then W captures the nearness of the locations, okay, of the two states. Okay, for example, if state I and state J, okay, so they are neighbors to each other. Okay, so then you know that state J will get the value of 1. Okay, but if state K is not neighbor to state I, okay, it does not share the border, so then it will get the value of 0. So all the states which are sharing border with a particular state, okay, so in this weight matrix they will get the value of 1. Okay, and the states which are not bordering with the I state, so they will get the value of 0. Okay, so here I have done this for I states, so I can do this for all the states, okay, in India. Okay, so for the first state, so these are the neighbors, so they are getting 1. Okay, the other states are getting 0. For the second state, these are the neighbors will get 1, the other states will get 0. Okay, and so on. Okay, and you do for all these states to construct the weight matrix. Okay, now this is similar in the time series. You know, we look at the autocorrelation structure. Okay, so this is we do similar thing over here. Okay, so the states which are near to you, so you give higher weight to them. Okay, and the states which are further away from your location, so they will get the value of 0. But here in this paper, we are not looking at the physical distance, okay, between the states, or whether the states are sharing border to each other. Okay, what we want to look at whether the states are similar, okay, in terms of their infrastructural investment. Okay, so that's why the weight we have considered, okay, between the two states. Okay, so that is in reciprocal of Dij, okay, which is the distance, okay, which is defined as this. Okay, so this is the difference of their expenditure on industry, okay, in one period lag. Okay, so if this distance is small, so if the states are similar in terms of expenditure industry, so then they get higher weight. Okay, so Wij takes a higher value. Okay, but you know that if they are distant from each other, okay, so they are very dissimilar. Okay, this difference is large. Okay, so then the value of weight will be small. Okay, so that's the way this weight matrix has been calculated. Okay, so on average, okay, what happens when this WLPVT INV term actually captures the average investment, okay, done by the other states, okay, with giving higher weight, okay, to the similar investment state. Okay, and rho is the coefficient of that, right? And we also include extortion per lakh population. Okay, so that we have done, and you know that there can be these there can be dependence, okay, between the states which are similar in terms of their industry specific investment, okay, in terms of their extortion per lakh population. So that theta captures that coefficient. Okay, so the effect of extortion per 1 lakh population of the other similar investment states. Okay, so how does that affect the private investment flow in a particular state? Okay, theta captures that effect. Okay, right. So so that's the thing. And similarly, you know, you can so some of the in this regression we have not taken all the explanatory factors. Okay, so some factors are left out, so they are included in the error term. So error terms can also have this kind of dependence on each other, okay, through the weight matrix. Okay, so this this equation over here, okay, so that captures that particular relation. Okay. So, so this is a test for spatial regression. I am not going into this. Okay, so I am just showing you the regression results. So we are almost at the end. Okay, so so we have 3 different kinds of regressions. The first regression, actually, so here you can see that in this table. So for technical reason, I don't have the value of theta, and so there are 3 coefficients: rho, theta, and lambda. Okay, so which were of our interest. Okay, this table has the value of lambda, okay, but it doesn't have rho and theta. Now in the first regression, okay, so this 0.37, okay, the value corresponding to that, okay, will be the value of rho. Okay, so what is rho? So it captures, now when we run this regression, we assume that rho is a positive number. I mean, rho is a non-zero number, okay, but the value of theta and lambda, they are 0. Okay, so this is called a lagged spatial, I think ACR is spatial autoregression. Okay, so this is lagged ACR regression. Okay, and when you do this regression, okay, so then if rho is significant, okay, so that means, I mean, the private investment in the other similar infrastructural investment states, okay, affect the flow of private investment in a particular state. Okay, and that is significantly positive. Okay, at 5% level. Okay, so that means there is spillover. Okay, in terms of in terms of private investment. Okay, between the similar industry specific investment states. Okay, so which actually supports in some sense, okay, our theory that, you know, that there is a strategic interaction, okay, between the states. Okay, and I mean, the actions taken by one state, okay, in terms of infrastructural investment to affect the flow of investment in the other state. Okay, so this is the value of rho. Okay, and this is significant at the 5% level. Okay, and you can see that the extortion per 1 lakh population, so that is negative again. Okay, and significant at the 1% level. Okay, right. Now go to the next regression. So this is Sarma. Okay, so what happens here, we assume, so in the earlier regression we assume the rho is a non-zero value. Okay, but here we assume both rho and lambda. Okay, so these are non-zero values. So remember, lambda is the dependence in terms of the variables which has not been explicitly taken into account, okay, in this regression. Okay, so here lambda comes to be significant, right, and it is negative at 1% level, but rho is still significant, okay, positive number. Okay, and but extortion per lakh population, so that again significant. Okay, so that is 0.004, okay, and significant at the 1% level. The last one, Okay, the last one so shows that, so this is the one, okay, where we assume that not only rho and lambda is non-zero number, theta is also a non-zero number. Okay, so but when we run this regression, the extortion per population, so that again comes significant negative number. Okay, but the value of theta, okay, so that is insignificant. Okay, so that is minus 0.003. Okay, and that is not significant. So that means you know that the average extortion level in the other similar investment state, okay, so that does not affect, okay, the flow of private investment, okay, in the state. Okay, so that's why this is important to notice. So I go to the results. Okay, so what we derive is the following. So similar industry specific investment states have significant positive spillover effect on the flow of private investment. Okay. Right. So can you see the slides? Okay. So similar industry specific investment states have significant positive spillover effect on flow of private investment in a state. Extortion rate in state I has negative direct and indirect impact on flow of private investment in state I. Okay. So one can calculate the amount of loss due to extortion, okay, in terms of private investment in state of West Bengal. So in our calculation, it will be 60 crores per year, okay, due to one additional case of extortion per 1 lakh population, okay, during 2006 and 11. Now, extortion rate in state J does not have significant impact on flow of private investment in state I. Okay, so this is calculated, the loss in West Bengal is calculated on the basis of the coefficient of 0.004. Okay, so that is 0.4% loss, okay, for one more case. Okay, so on the basis of that, right? So you can say that, I mean, so if one more case increases, okay, so the loss will be 60 crores. Okay, but of course, I mean, there is no spillover in terms of the other states extortion. If the extortion in the other states go up, okay, so that will bring in more private investment in your state. Okay, so that does not happen. So we don't have any evidence for that. Okay, so thank you very much. So this was the paper. Okay, so if you have any question, I'll be happy to answer.
So before we go on to the question answer session, let me make an announcement. There will be a feedback link provided in the chat box of Google Meet and comment box of YouTube participants. And you have to fill up the form so that we can provide you up with the e-certificates. And for your help, Google Meet and YouTube will be extended more for 10 minutes. And after that, 30 minutes will be there to fill up the form. Now, we can go on to the question answer session. It seems we have few questions. I'll request Professor Manos Ranjan Bhaumik to carry out the question and answer session.
First of all, I thank Professor Vivekananda Mukherjee for such an exciting presentation. So, let me ask the first question from Professor Kunal Noshkar. In recent past, we have seen some states move towards dissolving some labor laws in order to give incentives to the capitalist class to revive the dwindling economy by increasing the investment that sparked a major debate nationwide and also at international level through ILO criticizing the extreme move. In this view, do you think that in near future the states would start competing on labor law dissolution front? Also, he is asking one more question, and if so, how would it put India in international market scenario, given that India is emerging as an alternative to China as a producer for the world in post-COVID situation? So these two are first set of questions from Professor Kunal Noshkar. Over to Sir, Professor Vivekananda Mukherjee.
মাইক অন নেই।
Sir,
Hello.
sir, are you there? Professor Mukherjee, are you there?
I'm sorry, the mic was off. So so the apprehension is quite correct. So actually it may happen that it may trigger a competition between the states to relax their own labor laws. Okay, and there would be a race to the bottom kind of situation. And so the question is how to prevent this. Now, the check can be at two different levels. Okay, first is at the level of the central government. So that was a possibility that the central government actually creates a law. Okay, so which says that you cannot dilute the labor laws. Okay, so that's the one. So in India, unfortunately, you know that the central government itself is promoting this kind of thing. So that cannot happen. The third is at the international level. Okay, the international level, you know that the companies, okay, which will come in India. Okay, so you want to attract the foreign direct investment. So the companies who will come are expected to come, okay, with their investment in India. So if their origin countries, they say that, I mean, so we are not going to invest in India if the labor law is diluted like this. Okay, so then of course there is a check. Okay, of course, if you want to export your product from produced in India, okay, so where there is violation of labor laws, so then of course, I mean, I think in the international law, I mean, so these countries, they can impose restriction, okay, in the source countries, okay, and this has happened earlier also in relation to, for example, child labor. You cannot use child labor, okay, in your production process, and in India, for example, many industries, they use child labor, and because of that, India was in trouble in exporting their own product. So this kind of thing, okay, so this would be important. I think India is signatory to ILO convention, okay, on labor law and all these things. But how does that bind in India's behavior? That I'm not sure. Okay, so so suppose we violate the labor laws, so what ILO can do in that? Okay, so I'm not very clear about that. Okay, so I hope I have answered your question.
And the another question was there, sir, from regarding India-China competition in the post-COVID 19 world in regarding attracting global investment.
So this is an important question, and I think so. There is a so what has happened? I mean, so there is a role played by US in this. Okay, so what US is doing? So because of its rivalry, I mean, because you know that Trump wants the American investors to come out of China and to invest elsewhere. Okay, particularly in US, they want them to come back to US. Okay, so that's why this is happening, and you know that because of, I mean, they want to build a league against China. Okay, and so that kind of thing is going on, and there is a campaign against China and all these things. But ultimately, at the end of the day, okay, I think that the investors, the private investors, okay, so they will look for, I mean, the cheapest location, okay, for production of their commodity. Okay, so if you get, I mean, cheap labor, and cheap labor in the sense, maybe, I mean, it's not the wage rate is not the lowest, okay, but the productivity is very high. Okay, so if that is the thing, okay, so then of course they will go to that particular place. So therefore, I think India has to compete with the other countries, okay, in terms of these kind of things. Okay, you have to offer them productive labor force, okay, which is not very costly, okay, good infrastructure and other things. And in this, we have to compete with Vietnam and other places, okay, for this. But of course, till now, I don't think there is many such cases, okay, where actually the industry has come out of China, okay, to locate elsewhere. The investment which has come out of China, okay, some of them have gone to places like Vietnam, Taiwan, and other things, Thailand, okay, not India. Okay, of course, we have received some investment, okay, but we don't know whether that is due to this tussle of US with China. Okay, but definitely US wants India to go against China. So that I can see, okay, so that's very clear, okay, to me. Okay, so that is happening. Okay, but whether that is going to benefit Indian economy or not, so that I'm not very sure about. Okay, so for that, India has to do a lot. First, you have to resolve the COVID situation. China is already out of COVID and they are producing in the full steam. Vietnam is doing that. We are not able to do that. Okay, so that is not a very good advertisement for Indian economy.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Professor Ritushri Chakraborty.
Yeah.
Do you think cases of extortion are readily increasing? What may be the causes of it?
Uh, I mean, the way it appears, extortion appears in our model is a kind of long-term phenomena, okay, of a state. Okay, now why extortion of particular state would be extortion prone? Okay, so that's an interesting question, and the reason can be, I think, I mean, so there can be many reasons. Okay, so this is a separate research topic. For example, in our data, we have seen that the states in northeastern states, okay, Meghalaya, Nagaland, and all these things. Okay, so there you have very high rate of extortion. So why these states are extortion prone? Now, there can be number of explanations. Okay, one explanation, kind of economic explanation which can be given other than the other, that sociological explanation, political explanation. So I'm sure there should be many explanations like that. I mean, poverty can be one of the reasons. Okay, so why people go for extortion, lack of job and other things. Okay, but if you compare these data, okay, with the data with states like Tamil Nadu, Delhi, and other things, okay, so they have good infrastructure, okay, and all these things, high GSDP, high market share, and all these things, good employment rate, good flow of private investment. Still, there is high extortion rate. Okay, so it's not very clear. I think it needs serious research. Okay, so maybe, I mean, the kind of, if high amount of investment flows in a state, so that in fact gives incentive to get involved in such practices. Of course, the punishment rate, okay, in the state, so that would matter. Okay, so if the punishment rate is low for this kind of activities, so that will promote extortion. Okay, so these kind of things are important. I'm sure, so there are many research works like that. In fact, I have also done some works on this. Okay, but that needs a separate seminar, webinar, to talk about all these things.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Next question is from Professor Bitan Haldar. Has EIA 2020 replacing the law EIA 2006 any impact on this matter of investment?
So what is EIA?
Presumably, he's talking about, is it environmental impact assessment law or something like that?
Oh. So then what was the question? I mean, what happens if we relax EIA or something like that?
As environmental, if it is environmental impact assessment 2020, replacing the law EIA 2006, and is there any impact on this matter on investment?
Yeah, so I think it has been relaxed. Okay, so since it has been relaxed, okay, so that would reduce cost of the industry of investing, okay, in the states. But when we talk about the competition among the states, so if it is relaxed at the central level, okay, so it is binding for all the states. Okay, so therefore, any state would not have comparative advantage in terms of EIA. Okay, so that would keep the level of competition between the states. So that game, I mean, so that Nash equilibrium unchanged. Okay, so that's for sure. Okay, so what is important, I mean, for state specific, I mean, the competition among the states. So if you want to talk about that, okay, so then what is important to notice is that the way the EIA is getting implemented in individual states, okay, the enforcement is important. Law can be very strict, it can be relaxed, okay, but what matters is the level of enforcement. Okay, so you can be very relaxed, okay, in enforcing EIA. So in that case, the cost would be lower for the private firms, okay, and then more investment will flow in. So this kind of thing.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Professor Jayanti Bhattacharjee. If public investment is high, is not it quite likely that it will attract more private investment, whether extortion or not?
Yeah, so actually, so if you have more industry-specific investment, okay, so then, of course, I mean, so it would attract more of private investment, okay, so independent of extortion. So that is true. So no doubt about that, okay. But what we have tried to see in this paper, okay, the interplay between these two. Okay, so because extortion is a negative effect, okay, and infrastructural investment is a positive effect. So the states which have higher extortion rate, okay, whether they are giving higher incentive. Okay, so that kind of thing. So I'm not sure I'm able to capture this, okay, in its entire glory in my empirical part, okay, but the theory was essentially about that. Okay, so then we have taken the similarity of the states in terms of their public investment. Okay, we have factored, we have kept that factor out of our calculation. Okay, so G1 is roughly similar to G2. Okay, so then in the empirical thing exercise, we have seen whether higher T1 actually reduces X1. Okay, so that's the novelty of this exercise, because we are controlling this effect when we are looking at the extortion thing.
Thank you, sir. We don't have any more questions. I just have one quick question, that is, in your model, do you consider the role of labor union or labor movements in influencing the flow of investments in different states, the variations of labor movements and the variations in investments in different states? Do you consider this thing?
No, in this model, we have not considered that, but one can do similar model on this. So just remove extortion and include the labor movement kind of things, and you can do similar things.
Okay,
so that's possible.
Thank you, sir. Now it's over to Professor Tamogno Mondal for the concluding session. So I request Professor Tamogno Mondal to take it over henceforth.
Thank you, sir. It seems we have covered up most of the questions. Few questions were left, which cannot be answered due to time restriction. I'll request them to mail to sir to their official email ID. And if possible, sir can give the answer there. Now, there's another announcement. The feedback link is there. You can go on to the feedback link, both in the YouTube and as well as the Google Meet. And that will be extended for 10 minutes so that till 30 minutes, you can fill up the form. And you will receive your e-certificate through email after submitting your feedback form with the correct email ID. And within a week, we will mail you that e-certificate. Once again, thank you, Professor Vivekananda Mukherjee, for your illuminating lecture.
Thank you.
Thanks to Departmental Head, Professor Devkumar Chakraborty, Professor Manas Ranjan Bhaumik, Principal, Vice Principal, and not to mention Abhishek Sarkar, our third-year student, who has provided the entire technical support. Thanks again for joining us today, and we will see virtually, possibly next time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.